Well, welcome everybody. This is Real Debate number 5, and I have great pleasure in welcoming Roger Wright and Dan Evans. So, Roger, welcome to the Real
Morning.
Debate Live.
Good morning, both. I've missed your interactions over the recent weeks. We haven't seen each other for a while, have we?
No, not at
No.
all. Exactly. Well, look, and Dan, who works for Reelbrands, the doctor of Reelbrands, is joining us. So today we're going to be talking about the value of waste in a throwaway society, a subject that really does create a lot of emotion, certainly in our household,
Mm,
which bin to put
mm,
what in and all the rest of it.
of course.
And seems to be an increasing subject that comes up at parties and whatnot. You know, everybody's
At parties,
almost,
Ian.
yeah,
What
obsessed
sort of
with
parties are
behaviour.
you going to?
Well, when they know you're in packaging, they go, "It's your fault we have all these waste
Yeah, fair,
problems." You
fair.
know,
Everyone's an expert, aren't they?
Yes.
absolutely, everybody's an expert. So what we're going to be doing, we're going to be talking about, or we're going to be exploring the challenges that the UK faces with their current waste strategy and infrastructure, and we're going to look at this sector and how it's managing to respond to changes in legislation and the behaviour of key stakeholders such as retailers, brand owners, and consumers, of course,
Mm,
and many other people in between. Roger has very broad experience in both packaging design and also from a technical perspective, and he's worked for some fantastic retailers like Marks and Spencers and Sainsbury's, and has been at Biffa since 2020. I think I'm right in saying
June 2020, I joined.
June
Yeah.
2020. And I would, if I can say, I've known you for a number of years now since the less packaging days. You're a
Mm,
creative, pragmatic person who brings, I think, a refreshing understanding of the complexities of designing out waste through better material choice, better pack design, and optimizing these things and bringing, very important innovation to avoid problems down the supply chain and
mm.
into the waste chain. So, look,
Mm.
Roger, you're very welcome,
Thanks, Ian.
and Dan, of course, you're very welcome. Um, I'm going to start off with, I always start with this question. So, what do you like doing when you're not thinking about
Well,
packaging
I
and waste?
well, I have three daughters, and they're quite spaced out in age, but the youngest one is 3.5. So my most of my time is spent dealing with a 3.5-year-old, but it's absolutely fabulous. In fact, I
I
got
bet.
through the first lockdown when I was furloughed with M&S. I got time with my daughter pretty much every day for 2 months, and I don't think you
Brilliant.
could ever get that back. So I spend an awfully lot of valuable time with my kids, and when I can, I go running and listen to music. And sometimes I can combine those two, as I
What
did this
sort of
morning.
music? What sort of
I'm
music?
I
What's
am
on your
I am a
playlist?
I am a big fan of electronic music, dance music, and techno. So
Okay.
that's the kind of stuff that gets me going in the morning when I'm doing my five
A
mile run.
curveball, Roger. That is a curveball. Wasn't expecting that.
Yes.
Dan, what sort of music are you into?
Pretty much everything,
Are you
to be
class,
honest. I mean,
classic, classic stuff?
quite a lot of classic, but sometimes it's a bit too pitchy. I mostly listen to Ludovico Einaudi when it comes to that sort of genre. But I mean, when I'm cooking with the missus, I'll slap some Disney on. Sometimes in the gym, I have Disney and then some old school rock, new metal, and all sorts.
Very good.
Like a
That
bit
is
of
that is broad. That is broad.
That is broad,
well,
very
I
broad.
mean, variety is the spice of life, isn't it? So why fixate on one genre when there's so much to enjoy?
When Dan says gym, you're talking to a serious
Yeah.
weightlifter here. You know, he's
Okay.
he's he's quite successful, aren't you, with your weightlifting?
I do all right.
What level did you get to, or have you got to?
Oh, I've broken some records, British and military. Actually, I'm gunning for the current British total and deadlift record at the moment. You know,
Wow. Now that's a curveball. I didn't expect that.
some little packaging science that likes to lift weights.
Well, that's one of the reasons why Dan was always interesting for us because he comes from a medical and also a military background. His attention to understanding detail and reading white papers and distilling the relevant information is quite extraordinary, I must say. You've got a good brain, Dan. You're a very lucky man.
Probably the first man to say
And
that.
your wife, your
Yeah.
partner will probably say a good body as well, but we won't go into that, eh?
Well, I'd hope so with all that weightlifting, yeah.
Can you imagine all this work and you look terrible, Dan? Honestly, what are you doing with your life?
The reason why I don't go to the gym and work out is I'm reliably informed that all good muscle turns to fat in the end. So I avoid those places like the plague.
On a biological level, fat cannot turn into muscle and muscle can't turn into fat.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
I mean, actually, Ian.
Actually. Go on, Dan. I know you've got a question you're dying to ask. You go.
Yeah, well, you've been around the block a bit, haven't you, Roger? So I'm guessing you've got quite an eclectic client portfolio. Out of everything you've done,
yeah.
What you like the most? What are you proudest of most, and why?
I was thinking about this question, obviously, since I saw the notes this morning, and I have to say, it's something that's where three or more things came together, and it's often the case. The most satisfying thing is when you've tried to collaborate with different parts of the supply chain and something comes together. And this example was at M&S, where we worked really hard to harmonize the amount of printers we were using. We were using over 500 printers, believe it or not, when I joined the business across the world. It was incredible, and we got that down eventually to 50 printers.
Oh, damn! Okay.
It took a lot of work, and this was, as Ian alluded to, this was the work we were doing with less packaging at the time to try and not only harmonise the amount of printers we were using, but harmonise the amount of designs of packaging, structural designs. My background is a structural designer, of course, and then in this role I was a packaging technologist, so I was pulling together different strands pulling the threads together of the different bits that we needed to do. So we'd harmonised our print base, we'd harmonised the structural design through the work of less packaging, by creating common formats, and we had a design challenge to pack wine glasses. And so, we came up with a nice pack for some wine glasses. And we also actually, and this is the funnest part of the project, we embedded AR into the packaging itself. So you would scan the pack with the Blipper app. I don't know if you've heard of Blipper, but it recognised you didn't need to scan a QR code or anything like that. You recognised the design of the pack as it was programmed into the app. And there was a guy printed on the side who was actually M&S's wine buyer. And when you AR blip the pack, he would talk about the right wine to put in that glass.
Oh, I like that a lot.
So not only had we had a brilliantly printed box, it was beautifully printed. The design was fantastic. The creative was much better than it was before as well. Of course, the creative was good. The print quality was great. The structural design was perfect, and we had this cherry on top with a bit of AR thrown in for good measure. And the end result was really, really great, and I'm really proud of that pack. I talk about it a lot when people say, "What have you done at M?" I did loads of funky things at M&S, but that was one of the best, I think.
Yeah, no doubt.
Later on, we're going to talk about technology, but as you brought it up, let's talk about it now.
Yeah.
AR, augmented reality, AI, artificial intelligence, and all these other technologies. We are starting to see more and more use of this to help communicate packaging, but also to make sure that it ends up in the right waste stream.
Yeah.
How do you see that panning out from a waste perspective? How do you see that panning out so that the consumer and also waste management companies can efficiently sort waste?
It's technology for good, isn't it? There's a lot of chat about technologies kind of ruining things, but actually, my glass is half full with technology, and I think it will impact in two ways, in the waste management, or if you like, the packaging and waste management space. So yeah, we're already seeing AI technology start to be used in material recycling facilities. We call them MRFs. So in the MRFs, there's cameras set up that can actually recognise packaging as it passes under the camera, and then flick it off into the right sort of silos of material. That will only get more and more sophisticated and more ubiquitous across all the MRFs across the country. So we're trialing something called Recycle at the moment, which could potentially look at the branding and the size and the shape of packaging as it passes underneath in real time, And that's the challenge.
Would know what material it is.
No,
which
it potentially knows what it might recognise the branding, or it might recognise the material itself. It starts to learn what a Coke bottle looks like. It starts to learn what perhaps a Tetra Pak might look like, and then it just gets faster and faster at doing that. So that's going to happen. But what's more interesting for me is how technology will interact with the behavioural change we need to impact with customers. And we'll probably come on to what are the biggest challenges for waste management, but we've got to try and teach people to be better recyclers and to have more and to value the material a bit more. You talk about the value of waste. I don't think we really appreciate the value of the things we throw away, and we've sort of plateaued as a country. We've plateaued at 50% recycling, which is the whole reason we've got a resource and waste strategy to try and drive that 50% up nearer sort of 80-90%. Technology will play its part in that in a big way.
It hits a chord. I'm obviously an avid recycler. I think it kind of comes with the territory, doesn't it? And every time I go to a community recycling facility, there's always wrong stuff in there, and this is like really, really simple stuff. And often I'll see lots of paper and whatnot encased in a plastic bag, then put in with paper and all sorts of things.
Yes.
And that's the a very minor thing. There's some crazy things. So the more we can teach people, the better. Because currently we have lots of people blaming us and blaming companies when really, we all have to take responsibility. This isn't just Coca-Cola's fault. This isn't just whomever's fault. We all have a part to play, and none of us are perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think
also we end up with very complicated materials such as laminates, which to the consumer they don't understand. From a technical point of view, they're creating shelf life or protection in some way. These pouches and flexible packaging as being a perfect example. They may feel like paper, but in fact they're not. And the consumer doesn't know which bin to put them in. Maybe paper on the outside, but on the inside it's plastic. That's probably not going to be widely recycled. You mentioned Tetra Pak.
Correct.
Not every local authority will recycle liquid cartons. I think only about 10% of liquid cartons are currently recycled.
I think it's slightly more, but it's not enough for it to be claimed as widely recyclable. And that was one of the big things at M&S. We championed that phrase, widely recyclable, because everything in the world is recyclable, but not everything in the world is widely recycled. And that's the big difference, and that's the bit of work we need to do. Have you heard of a thing called wish cycling? I'm sure you have.
I've not actually.
Hashtag wish cycling. Look it up. It's people do put things in the bin they think they can. They just wish they could recycle it, so they recycle it. And the Tetra Pak is a classic example of that. You need to check with your local authority if they do actually recycle it or not, and they likely probably don't, to be fair. But that will change. I think there were waste management companies are working very hard to be able to try and sort all those materials out in the future.
Well, it's currency at the end of the day, isn't it?
Exactly. It goes back to that. It all has a value. All waste is a valuable resource. It's just in the wrong place more often than not.
Yeah,
it certainly is. But we're still in the UK exporting, I don't know, a huge amount of our waste to countries like Turkey and Indonesia, and that waste can end up being open burnt. Doesn't all get recycled. What's your view on that, and how do you see that panning out over the coming years? Do you think we'll continue to export our waste? Well, is our problem?
We are, as a Biffa, we're no longer exporting waste to non-OECD countries. So Indonesia, India, China, we're no longer exporting any kind of waste, paper or plastic. We are still, of course, potentially exporting to Turkey, but then there's been a recent issue in Turkey. We've seen that. And obviously we will still export materials into OECD countries, so the likes of Scandinavia, Germany, France, etc. And unfortunately, we need to continue to do that because there isn't enough capacity in the UK for a lot of these materials, especially things like paper. There aren't enough paper mills in the UK to cope with the amount of paper we generate as a country. So other than burning it or landfilling paper, which you never want to do, obviously, you will have to export it to some of these other countries that can can convert it into new products.
But we know that particularly since the pandemic, that there's been a shortage of supply of corrugated materials because
Yes.
many consumers are not returning their cardboard boxes from,
Yes.
say, Amazon.
Yes.
Sitting in the garage or in the wherever, gathering dust and not being returned.
Yeah, this is curious. I don't know anyone that keeps their corrugated boxes, so it's a curious trend, and I'm sure it's true. But for me, that this is an issue not necessarily with people keeping cardboard boxes in their garage. It's using less cardboard in the first place. I think anyone who's received a parcel, and I won't name names, but anyone's received a parcel and it's slightly bigger than perhaps the product inside, there's many examples of that. And I think we can do a lot better and use a lot less corrugated. And therefore there would be there'd be more material in the system for everybody else.
I get more frustrated actually with the void fill and all the various different types of void fill. And some of it's made of quite obscure materials. You think, well, is that recyclable? Where do I put this woolen absorbent protective thing? Which bin does that go in? It's not mentioned on my list.
So one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest challenges with packaging in the web retail space is not necessarily the packaging; it's the logistics. I mean, I'm sure if you've ordered some clothes from a famous retailer like M&S, you might not necessarily end up with one parcel. You might end up with 3 or 4 parcels, and you think, well, that can't be right. But it's just the way the logistics system works. They can't fulfil all the products all at the same time in one parcel, and therefore, that's 4 times more packaging than you probably should be receiving. And then it's plastic, of course, and then you can't recycle it anyway when you get it.
Yeah. Do you think that's because we've all been a bit spoilt with next day delivery, when really we should just chill, give it a week, and you can get it all in a one.
Definitely.
I mean, it's not.
I'm trying to convince my family, and particularly my daughters, of this particular this. Why don't we wait an extra couple of days? Maybe not.
Yeah.
Demand such a fast service, because it does generate waste. I think anyone who doesn't think that's the case is lying to themselves, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also, fulfillment on a mass scale, it doesn't always come from one location, does it? Sometimes, you put your order in on the website of the retailer or provider of products and services. It may be coming from, multiple locations. So it can't end up in one pack.
Well, I know from bitter experience working for M&S the challenges that we had with the fulfillment of thousands and thousands of different SKUs, potentially from different places around the world. Trying to combine it into one parcel is virtually impossible. And then how do you make the box the right size for that infinitely sized thing that you've just bought? That's why you see void fill, because you get boxes that have to accommodate for a multitude of different combinations of products, and rather than let the customer down, they have to have a big enough box to cope with it. But actually, what I think is what we should see more of now is hopefully dynamic carton erection machines for these fulfillment houses. So hopefully there'll be more right sizing going on, and like I say, there'll be less corrugated being used in the first place.
This is something that IKEA is doing, isn't it? IKEA are making their packaging to demand.
To be fair, so Amazon have invested a lot of money in dynamic carton erection machines. It's just they've just got to scale it up now across all their markets, and you can imagine how difficult that will be for them across the world. But it'll happen, and it just needs to happen a bit more quickly, I think.
There's Amazon back at the door now, probably.
There you go.
You can probably hear my terrible doorbell going off. What did I say at the beginning? Unforeseen things that happen.
At least my dogs haven't sounded off yet, so that makes a change.
Yeah. Give it time.
Yes.
If you are sending things by post, there is this temptation just to stick it in a plastic bag. That is probably going to be the cheaper option, particularly if it's a textile product or something.
Yeah.
But the consumer doesn't like that, generally speaking. They see plastic bags as pollution, more plastic.
Yeah.
They can move to paper, although of course they could move to a box, but that adds a lot of cost, doesn't it? And a lot of more energy as well, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing, of course, that online retailers are doing with web retail packaging is trying to use returnable, refillable bags and boxes instead. Now, your classic bag from a fashion house might be returnable once. You might be able to reseal it and send it back, but I'm talking about things that can be used over and over again. So there's some cool innovations out there. It's trying to scale that up and do it in a sensible commercial way. And I think some of these big brands are going to have to collaborate with each other to be able to do that. No one can do it on their own, unfortunately, because the cost is too much.
So, from a broader perspective, what do you think that government, retailers, brand owners, what do you think all the key stakers need to be doing to reduce waste and increase the 50% recovery target we sit at the moment across all the different material streams? What sort of things, what broad things do you think need to happen?
Well, obviously, we talk about the circular economy a lot, don't we, in our industry? But we need to make that real for people and just help them understand what does that actually mean. And for packaging, of course, from my perspective, that means introducing more reusable, returnable things. If you can't reduce the amount of things you're doing, if you can't reinvent the business model completely, which often you can't. So I use the SodaStream example. SodaStream have reinvented themselves, and you don't need plastic bottles anymore. They completely changed the business model. You can't always do that, so you've got to be able to to try and make what else can you do within the context of a circular economy. I think, and that's trying to detach yourself from finite resources effectively in the first instance. And that might actually mean you have to use a renewable paper instead of plastic potentially. But you have to think about the carbon impact of what you're doing as well. So it's about the reduction and the optimization, as well as what physical materials you're using. So that is something I try and talk to our clients about, is try and think about what the circular economy actually means for you when it comes to packaging. Try and adopt those first principles of what Ellen MacArthur is trying to talk to us about.
Which can work for high value consumer products, but when you're talking about food, where margins are incredibly tight and packaging is integral to the cost of the product, of course, but also its impact. How do you do that as a food producer and really truly have a circular economy when you're trying to grapple with things like shelf life and product protection and safety and health, etc.?
Yeah. It's very challenging, but actually I've seen, I applaud what Iceland are doing. They're dipping their toe in the water in terms of looking at alternative materials for products that are, for people on lower incomes. People want it's an affordable alternative to plastic. And so what they've done is, I think, is really interesting, and I think a lot of the other retailers could learn a lot from that. But you've got to counter the challenges that they all pile in on paper-based packaging, and you get availability issues with paper, and then what happens? So it's got to be a more sort of nuanced, measured approach, I think. But I think what Iceland have done is proven it can be done at high volume, low cost. I think what they're doing is excellent.
Yeah, we're certainly seeing with things like produce and meat packaging a shift away from plastics generally to viable fibre alternatives. But I think the point you make about paper is not always the answer. It needs to be probably something that's made from plants or crops that are not food based.
Well, in parallel, you've also got to try and reduce the amount of materials you're using in the first place. Of course, that's
you
kind of.
Need the packaging.
Do you even need the packaging? Exactly. So you've got these things have all got to happen in parallel. You can't just switch from plastic to paper. You've got to be doing something else to reduce the material in the first place.
Oh,
we've lost Dan.
I think Dan's perhaps got a noisy dog or something. They'll be back with us shortly, I'm sure.
And that's
nothing to do with dogs.
Dogs.
I don't know if you can see it.
Yes.
I always get a hankering for a pear, so I always have a lot of pears. The missus went out and got me some pears. Pears, you know, there's this fruit that's quite robust as long as you're not slapping it around. This was on top of my pears. There was a little paper tray. I thought, hey, that's okay. There was still a plastic film, which isn't ideal. And then there was this, a shield to stop them getting crushed. And I just thought, I've never seen apples with that. I've never seen any other pear with them. I've never had crushed pears before. I've never had a bruised pear before. Yet they're now slapping on this bit of plastic to kind of...
I'm no expert on pears, but I think pears bruise very easily.
I've never had
one of the problems.
I've never had a bruised pear. I'm sure they do bruise. There are many billions of them, I'm sure. But to stick this on top of it when you can just not throw it about.
It's patently not too much packaging, isn't it?
But it's also education of the consumer to accept that, you know, when a piece of fruit is slightly bruised or slightly wonky, there's nothing wrong with it. You know, it's absolutely fine. But there's an education piece there.
Yeah,
I know Morrison's have worked hard on selling wonky fruit and encouraging consumers to choose products that don't look beautiful.
As long as I can eat and it tastes all right, I'm good to go. I don't need 3 types of packaging for my pears.
It speaks to our need for convenience, doesn't it? We kind of want to be able to pick up 4 or 6 pieces of fruit in one go and not have to put 6 individual bits of fruit in our basket and then unload 6 individual bits of fruit. But I think that's a behavioural change we need to try and encourage to use less packaging.
We did a video the other day actually where we did a Morrison shop, bought, you know, sort of a common basket of goods. And we worked out which of those products could be easily, widely recycled and which ones couldn't. And 2/3 of the products could not be widely recycled.
Yeah.
Some of them had recycle on them, which when you actually looked into how you recycle them online, it's, you can TerraCycle it. What's the viability of TerraCycle? Who's going to TerraCycle?
Yeah.
Well, often that relies on the consumer posting the packaging back, which is absolutely bonkers.
Someone sees recycle me. Oh, that's definitely paper. In it goes.
Or you've got to take the bag back to the supermarket and get them to recycle it. And unfortunately, consumers are not going to probably do that.
This comes back to your original question, I think, Ian. What can the government do about the challenges we've got? And the resource and waste strategy does include a piece around mandating clearer labelling, mandating honest and clearer labelling. So honesty is really important. There's a lot of greenwashers, we know. So hopefully it'll happen quickly enough for this to make that change, that behavioural change, and people understand that what can and can't be recycled, and it won't be greenwashing. So that's what the government could definitely help if they get that through as quickly as possible. New labelling.
I've got an example here. We probably all know what the Resi cycle. Sorry, the Mobius loop.
Yeah, the Mobius loop interrupted.
So the consumer sees the Mobius loop, you know, the green arrows going round in a circle.
Yes.
And they think, great, this product can be widely recycled, when actually not necessarily. And those
I saw an article last week in California. They're banning the Mobius loop because it's too confusing, and I think that's a good move.
And also words like this product is biodegradable, or this product is compostable, which, as we all know, that there's a complicated subject, compostability. So let's get into compostability.
Oh, why not? Let's do it. Yeah.
Oh, this always either gets people's hackles up or gets people terribly excited. What's your view on compostable packaging generally?
My view, and it doesn't necessarily align with the waste management's view, but my view is that it's a good force for good. It's a force for good if we use it in the right context.
The right context.
Context is king in this for me. So 2 obvious examples, and they're not the only ones, but if we can facilitate more collection of food waste through compostable packaging, that's good. So anyone I'll call out the co-op home compostable carrier bag that can be used as a food caddy food waste caddy. Brilliant. That's a good move. And also for tiny bits of packaging that even if you were, a fervent recycler and you put it in your bin, wouldn't get recycled because they're just too small. And the classic examples are stickers on fruit. Again, back to fruit. So those little stickers are actually little bits of microplastic that get into the environment, more often than not. If they were compostable, and obviously maybe carried through into food waste, they could compost in food waste. That would be ideal. And there's a classic example right there. There's something that needs reinventing pretty damn quickly, to be honest.
Indeed. Yes, I think where packaging is contaminated with food, then I think you're right. I think the obvious route is for it to be put in the food bin, so it can be composted with the food.
Yeah, it's kind of the sensible thing, isn't it? You can't do anything else with it, so compost it. You can't recycle it, so we don't want it to go into landfill. So let's look at composting.
But often people with compostable packaging, the least interesting thing about the packaging is often the compostability of it. That's, for me, that's the most interesting thing is it's from a renewable source. So we go back to that. It's having the least impact in the sourcing of the material.
Yeah.
And the composting is kind of a nice after effect of what you've done in terms of reducing. You've not used an oil-based material, for example. So composting is a lot. You see a lot of brands marketing. They're focusing in on the compostability. They're not necessarily focusing in on the the impact in the first place of the change they've made. They're often missing a trick with that one.
Well, it's also another tricky mistress, isn't it? Compostable materials. Who knows about industrially compostable and home compostable, different standards? And a lot of people seem to believe that if it's compostable, it can go to landfill and degrade, which I don't know if we can get 60-degree heat and the right biome in landfill.
I think what's going to happen is I think the language will change around this for the better. So I think the word biodegradable will stop being used, hopefully, and because compostable, at least you can clarify what it means. You can give it
fair.
You can say, is it home compostable? Is it industrial compostable? Or whatever. And I think the language needs to change, and then we need to educate people about what actually they're doing to that piece of packaging.
But as we know, there are rules around putting the OK home composting logo on a pack, which for anybody that doesn't know, looks like that. As an example, the TUV home composting logo. Now, if a pack says it's home compostable but doesn't show that logo, is it actually home compostable? Do we know for certain? Does it have that provenance guarantee that it is home compostable? Because I've seen many a pack that says it's compostable, but there's no proof of that fact.
This is another area for me where technology can play its part to help people understand a pack. I mean, those logos are quite busy and quite difficult to understand, even if you're in the industry. Is there a cleaner, funner, if that's even a word, a more enjoyable way of understanding what you can do with that piece of packaging? And technology can deliver. A creative mind could help you deliver that message much better than a confusing logo.
When we're talking to food brands, the brief is normally we want it to be plastic free, we want it to be compostable, and we want it to be widely recycled.
And cheap.
And we want the moon on a stick.
And then we go, well, hang on a minute, let's break that down.
I'll just get my fairy dust and unicorn tears and condescend for you.
But it is a very complicated subject, which as an industry, collectively, we do need to simplify and make sure that consumers and brand managers and retailers understand it. And so we're all aligned. And so we have an infrastructure that can really retain the value of these different materials.
Definitely.
I'd like to just sort of talk about different materials for a bit, because we often get asked, what's the best material to pack that particular product in? And as you know, there's no one single answer. But when we look at things like materials like aluminium, glass, and paper, they've got very good recycling rates. I mean, what's aluminium at the moment? Over 90% recovery?
Almost 90%, 88%, I think, last time I looked, something like that.
Yeah. Glass is over 80, isn't it? 85%,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
Paper, I think it's about 80, 85%, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we come to plastic, which, when you say plastic, there are lots of different types of plastics, of course.
Yeah.
Is what, 10, 15% at best recovery?
Over on average, but if you break it down, for flexible materials, it's about 6%. Flexible plastics, it's a 6% recycling rate, which is appalling, isn't it, when you think about it?
I read a lot of research that showed it was pretty bad, but none of it showed it was quite that bad. Well, some of it indicated, but that's bonkers. That's absolutely bonkers.
Yeah.
But
that's why plastic bottles will be a much higher. PET and HDPE bottles will be nearer 70, 80%. Particularly the plastic milk bottle is a highly recyclable item in the UK at the moment.
I mean, thank God, really.
And PET as well.
Those are things that would be extremely difficult to crack with another material, wouldn't they? So it's a bloody good job we have high recycling of that. Of course, it's not ideal, but at least we're kind of winning-ish there.
I knew Ian would bring this one up.
This is always this kind of product is interesting because, again, it's very emotive. You know, this is a paper bottle with a foil plastic in a bag, like a bag in a box, but in the shape of a bottle.
Yeah,
it's one of Frugal Pack's products, a Frugal bottle. What's your view on a product like that? That, you know, you can separate the two items. Part of it can't be recycled, but obviously the cardboard can be. What's your view of that type of innovation?
That's a challenging one. I talk to our clients about what I call it: the good, the fad, and the ugly.
The fad and the ugly.
The things you can recycle, the things you can't recycle, and then these fads that come up. And are they going to stick around or not? And the paper bottle feels a bit of a fad to me, not least because it's not going to get recycled in the waste stream, the current infrastructure. It looks like plastic. It will look like plastic to the recyclers in the MRFs. It looks like a plastic bottle. So it'll get sorted as a plastic bottle and end up in the rigid plastic waste and contaminate, the other waste streams. So it's a challenging thing to do.
I should say that this pack does clearly communicate that you can pull out the bag, put that in the black bin, and then put that in the cardboard bin.
Plastic bag doing the work. Why are you having thick paper for the advertisement? Using two bloody materials for advertisement. Now imagine if, let's say, the classic hits of Coca-Cola did something like that. We'd have no paper.
Coca-Cola are doing that. Coca-Cola and many other brands are trying. Now, you have to applaud the innovative minds of these brands, because you've got to. If you don't try, you're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah, everything starts somewhere.
But you've got to be really, really careful.
And I'm sure the next generation of this in a bag could potentially be a waterproof paper, or a biopolymer that's compostable or something.
Yeah.
So, I think with all of these things, you can't always solve all of the problems in one go. So you've got to look beyond the here and now, and sometimes think, well, okay, this isn't perfect, but it's moving towards something that might be better.
This is my view.
Won't necessarily be cheaper though. So just be,
like compostables and everything, and innovations like that. Some of them are terrible at the moment, but the future really could be bright. We've been using plastic for an extraordinarily long time, and we still haven't got the infrastructure right. So if we're going to get these materials useful in the future, especially as plastic is going to run out, we need to get cracking now. We need to get the crap phase done now, so we can nail it in the future and get the infrastructure sorted in the future.
Yeah.
It's, when people badmouth compostables and say, there's no infrastructure, it's okay. So cellulose materials have been around for ages, but they've not been mainstream for long at all. So we just need to grow the infrastructure. This is new. Of course, it's not going to be ideal. So let's push the government, like David Newman and other people are, to make it viable.
Yeah, I think these products, like the paper bottle, will be iterated into a much better material and into the right format. So again, I talk about context. Maybe a bottle isn't necessarily the right thing for this innovation. Maybe there's some other formats that would be better suited. But you've got to innovate, and you've got to try these things.
Yeah.
And that's why I call it. That's why I think it's a bit of a fad, because I don't necessarily think we'll see paper bottles go mainstream in the future.
It'd be amazing.
It's an interesting idea in the short term.
It might be a pouch rather than a bottle, perhaps.
Maybe, yeah,
like
yeah, exactly. They might find another use.
Yeah.
It's that thing in parallel. You've got to reduce the amount of material you use as well as innovate into new materials at the same time. You can't just switch from one to the other. And I think that's where the resource and waste strategy will be interesting, because when brands are modelling their costs now for the extended producer responsibility, which is obviously a big part of that. Actually, just going from plastic to paper, you won't reduce your cost necessarily. No. You're still using a raw material, and if you're not reducing it at the same time as you're switching, you're really not going to mitigate those costs for yourself as a business. So that's kind of one of the things we're trying to educate our clients about, is that you've got to do those two things at the same time, not just switch from one material to another, because otherwise you're just going from the frying pan into the fire, or vice versa.
So take a modern MRF. What does it cost to build a scaled up MRF? The sorts of facilities that Biffa have.
A super MRF, but like the one we've got in North London, is north of 300 million pounds. It's a similar cost to a paper mill if you were to build a paper mill from scratch.
And what does it take from for a greenfield site, from start to finish? How long does it take to put a new MRF in place?
Yeah, it will be 3 to 5 years to build one up.
Yeah,
I mean and they constantly need upgrading and servicing, and as you can imagine, it's a very dirty environment. So there's engineers constantly working on the machinery, and you can imagine the cost of that. MRFs don't make a lot of money. They barely make a turn of profit, especially when there's more demands being placed on them. Trying to fish out all of those hard to recycle things like nappies, which we always find nappies in our recycling. Believe it or not,
you know a thing or two about, Roger?
I do know a thing about nappies, but actually, I think I highlighted recently that Keep Britain Tidy did some research this year, and people are genuinely confused about nappies. They think, because they look and feel a bit like paper, they think they can put them in the recycling, and that's design. The design community needs to work harder to make sure that people don't think that.
Education.
Incidentally, yeah.
Just a quick one. Does anyone refer to as super MRFs as Smurfs?
No, I've never heard that before, but that would be wonderful.
Come on.
A super MRF is technically a super MRF is a material recycling facility bolted onto a plastic recycling facility. You've heard of perfs. You might have heard of perfs. Yeah. Normally are separate. So you get a bale of mixed plastics and then go to a perf to be separated and sorted into the different polymers. Well, a super MRF does the first bit and the second bit all under one roof.
Nice.
So it's a fantastic operation, and I'd love to show you it one day if we get back in there post COVID.
What are the current limitations then around the super MRFs and waste recycling?
Well, other than of course from the cost of building one, it's the
waste in general, in recycling. What are the limitations? What's holding?
I describe my colleagues will hate me for this. I describe it as quite Keith Robinson. This it's pulls and whistles and conveyor belts, and you're basically using gravity a lot to move things, but then it moves on to the next phase where you're using more clever technology like AI to separate the polymers. But it is quite a basic process, and you have to respect that when you think about commingled waste and all the different things that are in there. So a typical MRF will take in the materials, or smash the glass, and the glass falls through the little gaps at the bottom. It moves on, the metals are pulled out with a magnet, then what you're left with is probably a mix of paper and plastic, and then you take the plastics away, and what you're left with in theory is paper at the end. And it's as basic as that, and then the onward processes are more complicated and can fish out the different polymers. And we do that in our North London MRF, and many other of our competitors do. So you can imagine the limitations are the physical, the physical way it works, and therefore, so when you introduce a new material into that mix, so potentially we'll be asking Murph to sort out films and flexibles in a few years' time in that commingled recycling, and that's really, really challenging because, as like with the paper bottle example, plastic film looks a bit like paper to a Murph, so you could get cross contamination of film and paper. So we would want paper to be collected separately if we start to collect film in the future. We don't want that. We don't want to contaminate the waste, or reduce the value of the materials that we get at the back end.
Yeah.
Right back to the start, it all has value.
Why is it that flexibles and other types of plastic formats are so difficult to recycle them? Why do you think the figures are low, other than people not putting it in the right place? So when it gets to your facilities, why is it tricky?
It's in the current infrastructure. It will snarl up all the machinery in the Murph, so it gets caught in the rollers and on the beds and everywhere because it floats around. It flies around, literally floats and flies around. It's very difficult to control. Whereas everything else has got a relative mass, so your metals can be pulled out. The plastics have a weight to them, the rigid plastics, I should say. So it will need a modification of all the Murphs around the UK, the front end. So you'd have to build another section at the front end to be able to pull out all of the films and flexibles first before you do the other bits afterwards. And that's obviously, you can imagine the investment that's going to take to do that.
Yeah, and the engineering skill.
Do you have a video of one of your more modern facilities that perhaps could be shared?
I do, absolutely. Funnily enough, it was used recently for Suntory when Suntory redesigned their Ribena bottle with a smaller label. So it could be recycled rather than going to what we call jazz waste, which is coloured waste. They used our video in their promo, and I'll send you that. But I can send you I'll send you the raw footage of the. Yeah, I'll send you the raw footage of the Murph as well.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you. No, look, I've got a question for you, Roger, if you don't mind. If you had an audience with all of the CEOs of the top retailers in the UK, what would be your message to them in order to improve our waste recovery target right now? What would you say to them?
It's quite simple in my mind. It's about collaboration for me. Those retailers need to get together and not talk about collaboration, but actually get on and do it. So the best example that exists at the moment is when all the dairy industry got together a few years ago, created what they call the dairy roadmap. And part of that, not the whole thing, part of that was creating a milk bottle that was the same across all the retailers. So no matter which retailer you go into, they're all using the same style of milk bottle now, plastic milk bottle. And that meant that every milk bottle, no matter where you shop, can be recycled in the same way. And they've iterated and improved the design over the years as well across, so the labels fall off easier, the lids are getting lighter in colour, so it can be more easily recycled. And we're improving the yield of that material over time. And that's only because all the retailers and all the dairies got together and said, right, we're gonna do this. So I could imagine lots of other packaging formats where they could do that. So all get together and go, you know what, this product might have our own branding on, but the format is exactly the same across the piece.
Mm-hmm. Produce would be an interesting area.
And we're trying, it's early days, but we're trying to look for opportunities. Because Biffa, we can sort of foster those conversations between our clients who happen to be big retailers. We're trying to foster those sort of conversations now. Maybe not the CEO, maybe the head of sustainability rather than the CEO.
But, this is high on the agenda of CEOs now, and people like Richard Walker and can't remember the name of the boss of Aldi, but they've recently come out with some very strong statements about how they're going to reduce their plastic dependency.
Yes,
and have encouraged their suppliers to start to change the packaging formats. So that's good, but not everybody is joined up. That's what considers collaboration is not there, is it?
Yeah. So something like, I mean, you look at the loop technology that Tesco have introduced, and only Tesco could really make that work because it's a massive scale. But actually, if you think about it, if all the retailers got together on a reusable, returnable type solution for food packaging, the commercials would work better, wouldn't they? You would imagine. Although I'm not saying Tesco can't make it work, but imagine if Tesco, Sainsbury's, Morrison's, Asda all got together and did one system of reusable packaging, and they can apply their own branding if they want to, or they're often selling brands anyway, aren't they? So they're all selling the same thing more often than not.
Yeah.
Imagine if they got together on some of the high volume lines and did that at scale. That would be game changing.
I think what would be good there is, let's say you live in a village and you have to go somewhere else to do your big shop. So you go to your Tesco's or whatever to do your big shop, but there's only a little convenience co-op in your village. So most people, I can't generalize like that, a lot of people won't hang on to packaging and store it until they go to a shop. So it'd be good if they could just nip to their co-op on the way to the park or whatever and drop off that packaging there. It's the same thing, it's going to go to the same area. I think collaboration is definitely the key, isn't it?
Well, funny you mentioned Co-op, because Co-op have been quite bold of extending what they're calling the take-back scheme for flexible materials. So they're now introducing a bin where you can take back all those pear packaging. The bag that your pears came in or your apples came in. You can take all of that back now to a Co-op within a 5-mile radius, I think, or something like that. So they do their best to recycle that for you.
That's excellent.
Fantastic. Well, I've got one last question for you, Roger, and you know what's coming. So I'm an avid reader, as you are, as I'm sure you know. What book are you currently reading, and what book is the most inspiring read you've ever experienced?
Well, I've got two on the go at the moment, but which are How Bad Are Bananas by Mike Berners-Lee. So this is the carbon footprint of everything in the world, which is fantastic. You can just dip in and out. Mm-hmm. Look it up. I've got another one for fun, which is called Every Song Ever. So it goes back to my love of music. So this is a book that describes all the different ways you can now listen to music, either physically, online, downloading, streaming. And I think actually I can learn a lot from what the writer is trying to explain, how you can appreciate different kinds of music. And it's about listening, again? Isn't it? So I think listening is. It's called Every Song Ever by Ben Ratcliffe. I'll send you the in the notes afterwards if you like.
Yeah, we'll put a link on that one. Dan, what about you? What's your fave?
My favorite one is probably Basic Neurochemistry. It wasn't basic.
Oh, I don't think we should recommend that. But hey, I'm sure.
No, but if you want to learn a thing or two about everything about the brain, then oh my god, it's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Mind blown.
Is it a thick tome?
Yes. It's called Basic Neurochemistry, but oh my god, this is when I started getting into the brain, and I thought, I knew a thing or two about the brain, so I'll look into this. And it's just a case of the first page, oh my god, 20 pages of Google later, I found out what this one word was. Oh, there's another word I have to Google. And it was just amazing, and I learned so much, and the brain is just highly insane, as is the immune system, and it's just glorious.
I've finished reading it now, but one of my favourites, and I recommend it to everybody I ever meet, is this book by an American. He's a chef, farmer, and orator, a guy called Dan Barber. It's called The Third Plate. And what I love about this book, any of you read it?
No.
What I love about this book is it basically talks about food and the supply chain and all the impacts that we've made since the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
The issues with things like monocrops and the fact that we just don't have variety anymore, and the impacts that's had on nature. Fascinating read. If you don't like reading, or you want to get into, if you Google Dan Barber and watch some of his TED Talks, he's a fantastic speaker. He's so entertaining. So I strongly recommend that.
Is it well referenced?
Is it, sorry?
Well referenced.
Yeah, very well referenced. Yeah, it took him 10 years to write it.
Fair.
Yeah. Well, look, it's been a real pleasure. I've enjoyed our chat, Roger, and thank you very much for your time.
No problem.
I think we've gone over 50 minutes. I think, in fact, 56 minutes.
It always happens every time we talk, isn't it? It's like, right, we're going to talk about X, Y, Z, and then we do the alphabet.
We're aiming for 45, but we got 56. But look, thank you for your time, and
No problem.
it's
Well,
always
appreciate it, Rod.
you're inspiring to listen to, and your knowledge is phenomenal. So thank you very
That's
much.
very kind. Thank you, Ian. Excellent.
And we'll see you on the other side.
See you on the other side. Take care.
Yeah, take
Speak
care.
soon.